Over the last year, what have you done to better Ward 5? How have you been active in the Ward 5 community?
All right. I mean, a lot of the things I've done in Ward 5 as a private citizen, I don't really raise my hand and say, hey, look at me. And I've done some of the school cleanups. I've adopted families at the collaboratives. On a personal level, you know, worked in those areas. During the last year, I was still actually at the council and working on Ward 5 issues. One of the big pieces that I worked on over the last year was actually redistricting, and I got to interact with a lot of Ward 5 residents during the redistricting, both the ward redistricting and then right before I left, the ANC redistricting, which, as we know, is still pending, but the map we have is a lot better than the one we started with. So professionally, and then kind of as a private citizen, you know, I've done a balance of things for Ward 5.
Okay, you brought up redistricting, and I want to ask a follow-up question to that. I mean, I've worked with you personally on that too as well, and I know that's one of your, big things is under Michael Brown's office. What happened with redistricting? We haven't voted on the plan yet. Ward 5's plan has changed again. So where is that at? I mean, what happened if you were the person who oversaw this process?
One of the first ward task force reports that we dealt with was Ward 5. We got it into a working format where we kind of said, okay, we're close with a few tweaks. Really and truly, why redistricting hasn't gone to the full council yet is Ward 6 and Ward 3 had some outstanding issues that had to be addressed. And it was things as crazy as they drew an S&D that met at a point. And that's illegal. So it was really working out some of the other issues in other wards before they can bring it to the full council for a vote.
All right. As council member, what would be your top 5 issues? What issues would you want to tackle, day one on the job? What would those top 5 issues?
Day one, economic development, but neighborhood development more specifically. Really looking at our corridors, right here at Rhode Island, 12th Street, Bladensburg, North Capitol. How do we bring more amenities to the ward? The thing I hate most of all is having to drive outside of district to go shop, or drive downtown to get amenities and shop for things. So that's important, but making sure that things that come here are things that residents want. So to get the input on the front end from residents about what kind of businesses you want to see on these corridors, what kind of amenities you want to see in these corridors. So that's number one. Number two is real affordable housing. One of the things we can talk about until we're blue in the face is making sure that we have housing for folks so they can stay here. So we don't force out people that have lived here for a long time, but we have enough to welcome new residents in too. We can look at density and mixes like that, but it's got to be truly affordable. Our definition of affordability right now is not skewed. It's not actually conducive to actually making real affordable housing and decisions on how to fund those projects. Third is jobs. Jobs. It's one of the things I focused on. We need to make sure that every district resident has the pre-employment skills to be able to pursue a job, the real on-the-job training to be able to keep a job, and the backing of the district government to hold contractors and other businesses accountable when we look at giving them money, that they need to hire our residents or they don't need to get any district money at all. Number three, education. Education has to be on everybody's radar. We can't have offerings that are better in other wards than they are here. We need to have the same educational opportunities for our youth and their parents, their kids in west of the park have. We need to have the same offerings here. It's more than just shiny new buildings. It's more than just making sure the curriculum is good. But we also need to have the supports to look at the parents. If kids are coming from homes where the stability is not there, we need to make sure we have more supports to make sure that we're shoring up those relationships with the parents so they can help and be engaged and have parental involvement. That's the key to making sure education works. And the last thing is a general thing is public safety. MPD is here to serve you, me, everyone, to protect you, your neighbors, and your property. And we need to hold them to that. And we need to actually partner with them more to make sure that they are teaching us how to keep ourselves safe. They have the expertise and they can impart to us to make sure that we're keeping ourselves, our loved ones, and our property safe, and then we can enjoy our homes and live here in Ward 5 like we should.
All right, back to the topic of education. What is your plan to make public schools in Ward 5 residents' top choice. A lot of residents I talk to, and many of the people in the room talk to, see charter schools as their #1 choice. And we're continually shuttering schools. We just shuttered Shade Elementary. So what do we do to make charter schools, public schools, our first choice?
Well, it's political will, really. Public schools should be the #1 focus when it comes to the district government. So making sure that we fix the schools that are in place, and we don't automatically look at closing schools and selling them off to the highest bidder. You know, we know what the demographics are, and that we have more kids coming along. We're going to need these schools, so why would we sell them off? And we can't get rid of programs that we know that work, like the Montessori program at Langdon. I actually went through a Montessori program growing up, so I know how that program works and what it does, you know, especially for younger kids, teaching them to read, write, and do arithmetic. So we can't get rid of the programs we know that work, and we need to import, for lack of a better word, the programs that have worked in other parts of the city and make sure they're installed here. So we have the curriculum where kids, not only once we finally do get our middle schools, that they have the curriculum that allows them to go to the competitive high schools and go on to college or go on to trade school or be ready for the workforce. So it's a mix of those things. It's the facilities, it's the curriculum, and making sure that, you know, teachers teach and parents parent. And we need to do more on that side too. You know, reward high producing teachers and make sure we are drawing parents into the process too.
Okay, let's go back to development. McMillan Reservoir, at the last, at Council Chairman Brown's Economic Development Roundtable, residents testified in mass that no civic group, ANC, or large group of residents in general are in support of the McMillan Reservoir project as is. Do you support the plan? If not, or so, why? And how do you get the community, those communities most affected by that project, to come to the table and start moving this project forward?
I think the plan needs to be relooked at, needs to be reopened. You know, there's a lot of issues around McMillan when it comes to how it's going to affect the traffic patterns over there, how it's going to affect stormwater runoff, you know, and how that affects homeowners and having to deal with those kind of issues. We need to look at a smarter way to make that a more accessible place, have more green space. You know, if we're going to look at using the underground areas of McMillan, you know, to kind of offset some of the other structures that would take up more of the green space, we need to really open it back up, and we can't just charge ahead, you know, without the input of, like you said, there's a lot of folks who are not satisfied with that plan, and we got to put the brakes on and really look at it again. It can't just be for expediency's sake that we just try to get something over there. McMillan could be at its best a destination that draws people in from not just DC, but from Maryland, Virginia. If we just get the right plan and make it a destination, we can really do something over there.
So is it fair to say, as council member, you go back to the drawing board, square one with McMillan?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Rhode Island Avenue. Rhode Island Avenue has a lot of storefront churches. How do you integrate storefront churches into the long scheme plan for development?
The existing or?
Existing, yeah.
I mean, you got to partner with the stakeholders that are here, but they have to also understand that Rhode Island Avenue is ready and ripe to bring real amenities here for this part of the ward and for the ward itself. You know, this, again, could be a destination corridor, and it needs to be. I think one of the things that we haven't done effectively is really to do the heavy lifting on the front end, to bring all the stakeholders to the table. You know, it's easier to kind of quickly put a plan in place, put it out there, and move on without, you know, looking at what a constituency group over here wants versus a competing interest of someone else. The real hard lifting of this job is doing that stuff on the front end, and we haven't done a good job of it. So that would be one huge focus of mine, is to do the heavy lifting on the front end to make sure that everyone's working from the same amount of information, the same information, and we don't have the situation where, you know, we're chasing projects that are already, you know, halfway developed, halfway out of the ground, and we have to put the brakes on them. I think a lot of people get heartburn when they don't have real information on what's coming to their neighborhood. And I think we can alleviate a lot of that by looking at getting that information to people early and often.
All right, this is the last question for this part, and then we'll go to the audience. 901 Monroe, C2A or C2D? Yes or no? Either or, which one?
That's a good question. I think the way it's presented now, again, we have to look at it again.
C2A or C2D? You have to look at it again, or what?
I think I have to look at it again. I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but I think we can come to a compromise on that. without, you can do some more density without destroying the character of the homes around it.
Fair enough.